the Supreme Court heard arguments on how the Justice Department used a law enacted by Congress against the January 6th insurrectionists. If the justices decide to toss out this particular charge, it could legally impact hundreds of rioters involved in the attack on the U.S. Capitol. During today's hearing, Justice Brett Kavanaugh questioned why the DOJ charged some January 6 rioters with obstructing an official proceeding, which could carry more prison time. Listen.
There's 6 other counts in the indictment here, which include civil disorder, physical contact with the victim, assault, entering and remaining in a restricted building, disorderly and disruptive conduct, disorderly conduct in the Capitol building. And why aren't those 6 counts good enough, just from the Justice Department's perspective, given that they don't have any of the hurdles?
Because those counts don't fully reflect the culpability of petitioner's conduct on January 6th. Those counts do not require that petitioner have acted corruptly to obstruct an official proceeding. And obviously, petitioner committed other crimes that we've charged and that we're seeking to hold him accountable for. But one of the distinct strands of harm, one of the root problems with petitioner's conduct is that he knew about that proceeding. He had said in advance of January 6th that he was prepared to storm the Capitol, prepared to use violence. He wanted to intimidate Congress. He said they can't vote if they can't breathe. And then he went to the Capitol on January 6th with that intent in mind and took action, including assaulting a law enforcement officer that did impede the ability of the officers to regain control of the Capitol and let Congress finish its work in that session. And I think it is entirely appropriate for the government to seek to hold petitioner accountable for that conduct.
Joining us right now is Elie Mystal, the Justice Correspondent for The Nation. Elie, glad to have you here. Oh, okay, Elie, so this is where I am a wee bit confused. So to hear Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, first of all, has Brett just for my sake, has Brett Kavanaugh ever been a prosecutor?
No, I don't believe so. He's been a political hack. He worked for Ken Starr. I don't think he's ever been a prosecutor, but I'm not 100% sure.
So a guy who's never been a prosecutor wants to question, why did you had these 6 charges, why do you need this one? I'm sorry, I don't recall somebody asking a prosecutor, hey, why did you hit them with 10 charges? 8 was sufficient.
Yeah, so what Kavanaugh is doing right there is that he's basically saying, haven't we prosecuted these people enough? Haven't these patriots and tourists been through enough? Why do you have to charge them with this extra charge too? He's arguing that the Department of Justice is overcharging people, which is something that Brett Kavanaugh and the rest of the conservatives never do when the defendants are black, right? They never do it when the defendants are Latino. They're never worried about the Justice Department overcharging, over-prosecuting, going too hard against defendants who are of color. But now that white MAGA insurrectionists are feeling the rough end of the Department of Justice, suddenly Kavanaugh is like, no, these other charges are enough. These extra charges, and remember what we're talking about here, the obstruction of Congress charge, that's for the people who went into the Capitol looking for Mike Pence, looking for Nancy Pelosi, looking for the electoral ballots, trying to literally stop them from certifying the election. Over 1,000 people have been charged in connection with January 6th, just for the people who broke in and defecated all over the place and acted like fools, right? These charges are for the 300 or so that we think we're really trying to disrupt the function of the American government. And Kavanaugh is saying, no, that's going too far. You're hurting these people too much.
Amazing, because these people actually said it. They actually said, we're going to stop this. So they made it clear that they were looking to stop from impeding them from doing their job. They were kind of clear.
These are the people with the zip ties. These are the people, again, as Solicitor General Liz Prelogar said in the clip that you played, this is the guy, the named defendant in this case, this is the guy who said they can't vote if they can't breathe. what is that, right? So what the government did is they used this obstruction charge that came out of the Enron stuff, all right? And that's where the complication comes, right? This is, and if people remember Enron, huge scandal. They did various things to obstruct Congress investigating that scandal, including destroying documents and whatever. And after the Enron scandal was kind of prosecuted, what the government realized is that Enron was kind of using a loophole, right? Previous obstruction charges, like you needed a very specific thing. And so put like this, when you have too much specificity, there are loopholes, there are gaps. And so in the Enron situation, Congress created this catch-all provision. That's what we're really talking about here, a catch-all provision to count obstructions of official proceedings, obstructions of Congress, even if they're not specifically named by whatever Congress thinks of that day, right? So it's a fallback position to catch people who obstruct Congress in a way that maybe you haven't thought of before, right? So when the justices, Thomas, Alito, even John Roberts today, started kind of complaining that, well, the government has never used this before in this situation, Prelog, or the Solicitor General, responded, I think, accurately with, well, ain't nobody ever tried to attack the Capitol before.
Right. I mean, why are you using this? It's the same thing. Oh, Colorado, why are you kicking him off the ballot? Oh, because, let's see, we never had a president try this.
Right? This has literally never happened before. And this specific provision in the law was meant to catch things that had never happened before. So it's kind of a direct on-point application and use of the law. But because it hurts white folks, because it hurts, certain people's wives, because it implicates people that the conservative justices like, now they don't want to use this charge. And I'll just bring it back around because I know you talked about this yesterday and it's important to me as well. Think about what they did yesterday to DeRay, right? To DeRay McKesson, who did not start a riot, did not throw rocks at any officers, did not have anything to do with the people who were injured in the protests that the government is concerned about. Oh, for them, the Supreme Court can use every stitch of law, every trumped up, never used before operation of law to try to go hunt DeRay because they don't like DeRay. So they're trying to get DeRay. And so the Supreme Court says that's fine. But then when you try to extend and use a law specifically designed to implicate the times that we haven't thought of yet, no, now that's going too far. Why isn't what we charged them with already enough, according to the conservative Supreme Court justices?
So Clarence Thomas is sitting there as a part of this. He's married to a woman who was fully supportive of January 6th. That man should not even be near the bench.
Look, I don't know why he's there. You get to a point where, if y'all are comfortable with this level of open corruption, I don't know what to tell you, right? Because just as an interesting note, Clarence Thomas was absent from the court yesterday. Yesterday, they were doing a corruption hearing, basically about a public official who had taken gifts in exchange for official acts. Clarence Thomas ain't nowhere to be found yesterday. He was still on his RV. He was still out on his yacht with Harlan Gray. He didn't want no part of yesterday's argument, right? But today, he's back on the job, sitting there to defend insurrectionists like his wife. The simple fact that Clarence Thomas's wife could have, and I would argue should have been charged along with the very insurrectionists that Thomas now says shouldn't be charged at all, should disqualify him from this case. And the fact that that isn't kind of like a top-line media story, the fact that that's not going to be talked about in the New York Times report about this case tomorrow, it's infuriating, and I don't know how to get the country kind of to appreciate just how disgusting this is, just how lawless this is. And I don't know how to get politicians to understand that you need an entirely new ethics code with real teeth to stop this and by this I mean Clarence Thomas, to stop Clarence Thomas and people like him from ever happening again.
Well, what's also interesting is that he actually I love this part where he was like, well, is this really that big of a deal? Because weren't they just, doing what people do when they shout out in the middle of a proceeding?
Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch all made analogies to the January 6th protesters as if they were hecklers, right? Like, well, if you can prosecute them for obstructing Congress for January 6th, couldn't you prosecute a heckler who disrupted this courtroom's proceedings? That was
a heckler who decided to come out of their seat and run up to a member of Congress and in doing so knock a cop out and then make a beeline for the member of Congress or the city council member. You're right. That's the kind of heckler.
Right? Again, Solicitor General Prelogar had the right answer to that, and her answer was basically like, no, that's not the same, because that heckler isn't making you people run for your lives. That's what she said straight up to them, right? But the justices didn't care. Neil Gorsuch had a particularly annoying analogy because he was like, isn't the January 6th protesters just like, I don't know, pulling a fire alarm during an official proceeding, obviously trying to throw some shade at my congressman and my man, Jamal Bowman, who accidentally pulled a fire alarm in the Capitol. They always like to make a big thing about that on Fox News. So Neil Gorsuch referenced the fire alarm, not Jamal Bowman, my name, but you know who he was talking about, in Supreme Court oral arguments today, analogizing what Bowman did to, again, the rioters who attacked the Capitol with guns and zip ties and bear spray, looking to do things like, I don't know, hang Vice President Mike Pence. Like, that was the analogy that Neil Gorsuch thought was cool to make today. I said it online. You got to understand that these conservative justices are basically everybody's white racist uncle who just sits at home all day watching Fox News and then thinks that the world is what Fox News tells them it is. Like, that's who these people are, and you saw it today in horrible, stark relief.
That's absolutely crazy. Elie Mystal, anything else that jumped out at you that just had you almost pulling your hair out to a flat top?
I mean, look, I obviously this case is going to be 6-3 at least. I could even see 7-2. Some of the liberals were a little bit interested in the thing. I don't think it ultimately affects the Trump prosecution. Trump is being charged with obstruction of Congress. The charges are different for him because, like, he's literally had fake documents that he was trying to submit to obstruct Congress, which is a little bit more like the Enron thing than less like the Enron thing. So I don't think that it affects the Jack Smith case against him. The problem with that, of course, is that the Supreme Court has an entirely different way to defend Trump from Jack Smith. And we're going to hear that next week, next Thursday, when the Supreme Court hears Trump's immunity argument, right? So I don't think this case affects Trump. It's next week where they're going to do the dirty work for Donald. All right, then. Elie Mystal, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.